Okay, we can go ahead and get started. For September staff, we have one item. It's the return of the Montgomery Pearl that was here just in July. And as you can see in the resubmission and the staff memo, the applicants, I think, did two main things. The first of which is provided a lot more context area of the site. I think, we had trouble understanding the topography and the relationship of the site to the CCT. And so in their resubmission materials, they provided that additional context, but also they made a good amount of tweaks to some of the particular areas of discussion, like in the rear of the site and the relationship of the site to the CCT, as well as some tweaks to the massing of the west and central building, and some formulated mashing of the language of the front of the building to the rear of the building. But since this is the only item, we are being recorded, not live streamed. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So I think it's fair to say that the primary focus from our meeting in July had to do with the relationship of the building and the property to the Capitol Crescent. And there was some comments relating to the architecture along Montgomery Lane and sort of finding consistency between the south and the north facades, also aligning the buildings that are on Pearl Street. But again, the primary focus had to do with the Capitol Crescent Trail relationship. And I don't think we did, unfortunately, a really good job of explaining some of the challenges there. So I'm going to just go through three of them very briefly, and then I'll turn it over to BKB. So the first challenge is that from approximately the central mid-block connection to Pearl Street, there's a 17-foot gradual incline of the Capitol Crescent Trail. Making that even more complicated is the fact that the Capitol Crescent Trail was not built on the property line. It was built 10 feet south of the property line. So we have this gap of 10 feet from the Capitol Crescent Trail and the structural wall and our property. And so that created like this sort of a bowling alley concave open space. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do we solve for that issue. The other sort of challenge is the fact that from Pearl Street to Montgomery Lane, there's an elevation change of approximately 9 feet. And then the final thing is that the height compatibility standards that we have to comply with, I don't think really that they contemplated a situation such as this, which is two things. One is we are adjacent to a right-of-way, but unfortunately that right-of-way is not 80 feet. If it were, then we have to comply with the compatibility setback requirements. And second of all, I don't think it contemplated a relationship where the backyards of the properties were fronting on on the right-of-way. So nonetheless, we have to comply with the height compatibility standards, which means that we have stepping down of the property in the building in the south. We looked at whether there was a way to avoid that, to provide a little bit more flexibility, but there really wasn't, without trying to do a workaround or a runaround, maybe I should say, of the requirements. Can't do that. So I'm going to turn it over to BKB. They will also identify some of the changes that we made along the way. I mean, we think the comments that we heard in July were helpful, and we definitely have a better plan now than we did in July.
Thank you. We're gonna start with just some additional context information and then get into some of the massing changes first before we do a deep dive into the public space and the area adjacent to the trail. We've got slides, and we also have a 3D fly through that will show, which I think does a pretty good job of showing the topographical situation and how we've addressed it. So I'm going to turn it over to John, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the existing conditions that we are working with.
Firstly, thank you for the comments in the last review. I think they were pertinent and helped us to really kind of, as we talk through this, you'll see how the design's evolved. And I think creating a really nice relationship between the development and the trail. These are some existing photos that we went out and took just so everyone's familiar. with what's happening on the site. And it kind of alludes to what Pat's really said. You know, you've got the first image on the top left-hand side, just showing that looking down Pearl Street. So you can see that on the left, you've got the ramp that will take you up to the trail. Then we have this kind of 9-foot elevation change. So, you know, that's one of the things that we've looked at addressing by raising the level and eliminating a segment of that ramp to really improve the overall connectivity with the trail and Pearl Street. The image on the next image, number 2, just shows you that bottom of ramp where it sort of creates an L shape into that lower space with the walls. So by raising that level, we're kind of removing that wall and really improving that connectivity. The bottom lower left image is just showing you some of the existing conditions along the trail, where you have the kind of, I'm going to call it a capping beam, which I think is a UK thing, but the concrete sort of capping beam of the trail, and then you've got the sound attenuation along there as well, and a gap that Pat alluded to between, so there's a drop from that wall to the existing office building. So it's really how can, you know, anything that we do, we want to make sure that we reference, you know, examples like the High Line, just if we're trying to activate that edge and providing seating opportunities. So these were some of the constraints that looking at potentially removing that, pushing out the existing grades to meet the top of that capping beam, removing that sound attenuation wall, and having much more of a seamless integration between the trail and our new development. And then the bottom 2 images there are just showing the level difference again, but also we've nominated just a nominal red line there showing that, you know, our property line is offset. It varies, but sort of 10 feet from that trail. So one of the biggest challenges has been how we kind of addressing that relationship. That's just to familiarize everyone. The next image. We took on, there was references to the High Line. I'm showing some images here about, you know, creating spaces for, you know, the outdoor thermal comfort, providing seating opportunities, providing, you know, it's important to provide places along the trail that actually people can sit and socialize, you know, a unified, legible landscape that kind of creates that sort of connects the whole environment and then brings you, you know, reinforces legibility throughout the site, but also kind of leads you to these key destinations on the trail. So using the level grades in terms of creating terrace seating, where we've got the end of Pearl Street and the ramp kind of change. So really kind of integrating the landscape with the trail to create this sort of overall, you know, really improved public realm. And then I've got some images of the High Line. I would say the High Line's a slightly different condition because, you know, you've got the architecture against it. So it's really just taking some of those principles, not the exact condition, but taking principles of, you know, on the High Line, they provide seating opportunities, that kind of thing, the enhanced sort of experience. And that, in essence, they're the kind of things that we're trying to achieve with, you know, with the landscape public realm for this development. Next. We've had experience. This is a successful example. BKB undertook a student housing project in Madison where there was a commuter trail, and just some of the things that we've taken, you know, from our experience in this in terms of, you know, creating the flush entry at the building points, and then having kind of a meeting place with shading devices, seating, you know, bike parking, enhanced landscape to improve the experience along the trail, looking at positioning the building with terraces that outlook, you know, providing eyes on the trail, and the idea of sort of, you can see there with the flamingos, so sort of that public realm, public art, opportunities as well, and just how that kind of building starts to, you know, to have some relationship to the trail and really kind of activate it. So just some of the key things that, as we've been developing the design, that we were, you know, trying to put into our proposals. And then the next one. We also just contextually, take a step back and see, how our development is really fitting into the overall, site context within the area, and how it's, there are other it's about improving the legibility and connectivity to the trail and creating sort of two, or sort of gateway points onto it from Pearl Street and the mid-block connection. And then we also, just to show that, we are improving that linkages, and then we do have other kind of areas of recreational use, like sort of Elm Street Park with a new play area that's going to go in there as a complementary use, and then a future linear park as well as a recreation center. So it's really kind of filling in a gap and improving that connectivity to the trail, and providing those complementary uses. So that was kind of the kind of just taking a step back and seeing where our development's fitting in the sort of overall urban grain. Next. And then I've just included this diagram. You'll see it more in the 3D walkthrough. This is a before and after shot. Just some kind of takeaways on the top that I've highlighted is, we did have, with this 10-foot gap that we talked about, it was a kind of sunken area. And you can see it in the kind of mid-block connection that I've highlighted. And then towards the eastern side where there was a level difference. The new plan has looked at raising those levels up to the Capitol Crescent level and starting to create terraces and seating opportunities within that mid-block connection. That's really, I think, really successful when you see the model. Also kind of, on the top plan, we had more of a large expansive spaces. I think now with the bottom plan, you can see that we've really started to bring these smaller, intimate plaza spaces at the key destination gateways to the trail, and as well as some of the building entrance points. You can see this bike storage on the eastern side, and then going towards the left, where we have the more of an intimate plaza space and a connection there on the corner to bike storage area as well. We also have the walkout units on the back, so they're providing eyes on the trail. They can see that kind of linkage that comes out. And then I think the bottom plan is also kind of really bringing that kind of unified design language, which I'm kind of liking. It feels like one space. I feel like you get that when you're kind of looking at Pearl Street, where you've got this upper transitional plaza where people will come on their bikes, they can stop and then safely access the trail. And just to the left, there's a socializing space, and then that language comes and feeds you down to this lower level, which creates a really kind of nice gateway at the bottom of Pearl Street, which is also kind of supported by that monument steps that we're providing this kind of overview seats as well. So they were the kind of main changes that we, took on board from your comments as we've been looking at the levels, programming of how we've just sort of reworked this plan.
John, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Would you please go back to that slide? Could you just show us on these two slides where the edge of the trail is and where the 10-foot zone is, and then where your property line is, if you don't mind? I'd appreciate that.
It's approximately sort of 10. So where you've got Ben's driving, but where you've got that kind of edge, that the paved edge, if you like, and where it hits the green, if you offset a line from that kind of paved edge, sort of 10 feet inwards, that's the end of the kind of property line. If that made sense.
So basically, Pat, yeah, I understand. Thank you. That's helpful. So basically, Pat, the 10-foot zone is a zone that you're able to engage and reconfigure. You have access to that. You have some kind of an easement for that.
Well, we're hoping that we will have access to that. So it's good. It's right of way. It will require a maintenance and liability agreement from the county, but our presumption is that we can get them to work with us.
Okay, so that's still up in the air, you think?
It's something that we're going to have to work through. But
is there precedent for it?
Well, there are precedents for connections.
I'm just curious. Is there precedent? Have they done that in the past, given adjacent abutting owners?
There is uh, more, I would say, particular restrictions, but the Capitol Crescent Trail, I think it's DOT has guidelines for how to connect private property to the trail. Now, again, what that contemplates more is a path intersecting with the trail versus what we're trying to do, which is create a parallel space to the trail. So, our next stop after hopefully getting a thumbs up on this would be to have conversations with DOT.
Okay, thanks. Very helpful.
Okay, going back a little bit, like to talk about the architectural massing, we made a couple of big changes. And one of the biggest comments here was to treat these as a more like a gateway experience, right? And the idea was to have like these two corners a direct relationship in terms of like a height and presence also on Pearl Street. That's why we actually raised the podium level on the middle building like another story to kind of like match that cornice level of the west building, and that's giving us like the kind of like the symmetry that we were looking, and also the proportions with the width of Pearl Street. Another big change for the massing was to simplify these kind of like architectural, not language, because I mean, still is a massing building, but fabrics that we were like showing on the massing model. And our idea, I mean, if you go to the next one, our idea is to kind of like bring like whatever language we use on the stepping facade to the front of the building, and just really kind of like emphasize these fabric with the corners of the building, where we kind of like apply like a different fabric to also and differentiate these corner expressions. And that's those are the two biggest changes like along the massing.
You can see similar at the mid block with the corner articulation. And also here looking down, looking along Montgomery Avenue back toward downtown Bethesda. So those are the quick massing updates. We do have a 3D fly through that we want to show here, which I think will also show the massing updates, as well as zoomed in on the trail and public area. So I'll just pull that up, and it's about 3 minutes long. Give me just a minute. We'll go. So, oops. That is what we wanted to present today and then have a discussion with you about.
Well, thank you for making the change that we asked you to make. Thank you for this wonderful walkthrough. Helps explain a lot of the issues, and also when you bullet point them at the beginning, that kind of sets the tone of how complicated the site is. You definitely have done a lot, or you advanced the design a lot further in terms of landscape. I appreciate these intimate spaces that now seem to be connected and there's a purpose to them. I especially like that you redesigned that ramp, that 9-foot difference at the end of Pearl Street that connects to the trail. And you can see in the fly-through as well as in the plan, the stepping of the building and how well it relates to the steps, irregular shaped steps, right, that are leading up to the trail. Just as this kind of connection brings the scale of the stepping building and the scale of the, scale of our bodies right together. So I think that's a very nice touch. I look forward to seeing you at the next level. I know that, so we had sketch plan and you definitely have, in my opinion, you have shown the massing requirements for the massing that you need to show. So I think last time we talked about, can you maybe minimize the step-in to every 2 floors versus every other floor? The step-in does not bother me. It's just going to be expensive to build. And I think we wanted to view a few more shots where how you are articulating the corners. Focus much on that, but I remember we had previous comments where towers on every corner. Okay, I see. Yep. I appreciate that you evened out those masses side of Pearl Street, right? We talked about that, so that looks a lot more. That really looks like a gateway. Small difference, but big impact. You definitely have a tough area where that 10-foot property line / easement right in the middle of that path. And just to clarify, the outline of the building remained where it is. You didn't reduce anything, right? So if we look at plan, your before and after, right, it looks like it's exactly the same.
Building was actually pulled back.
But the central,
The central we didn't, yeah, the central we maintained. Yes.
just reorganizing those spaces kind of feels like you have more room there now.
Right.
And those, I especially appreciate the together alone spaces because they're broken up, but then connected with the endpoints of Pearl, and the other one is it's not really a street, but the alley, private alley. There's a focal point, whether it's steps or artwork. I think now it brings it so much better together. So I'm just looking forward to seeing what it, how the project develops the next stage.
Yeah, so this looks simpler to me in a way that I was, I think, sort of hoping to see. I was curious on that corner on the central building now, is that used to be stepped back a little bit in the previous drawing?
Here.
And am I correct that it's not now? It looks like it's sort of sitting on those poor trees. I don't know if that's just something about the rendering.
Go to the.
Right here, you mean?
Yeah, is that not step back in the way that it was previously? Or is it step back a little bit?
Go to that gateway.
We kind of like got rid of the angle. that we.
No, I know you got
more
rid of
saying.
the angle.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just on the, I was
And-
looking at the old image. It looks, yeah, I'm sure you can't see it, but it looks like it's straight in line with the facade below it.
That's right. I mean,
Okay.
like, that's something that I mean, there.
I don't think that's a problem necessarily. I'm just trying to be clear about what
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, I don't know that I have a view one way or the other. It looks simpler to me, but it also looks kind of compressed. So.
I agree, and one of the issues is probably like we're showing these like in a massing model, and like you don't see the railing, so the space, the gap in between the two floors. I mean, like it's very minimum right now. Once we start like treating these as like clear railings and like just open up like a little bit more like that recessed floor, I mean, like I think like it's gonna look completely different. But yeah, I do understand your point that it looks compressed right now.
Okay. I have a question on the east building on the trail side of it. There's at the top 3 levels, there's this sort of little cantilever out over the cutout of the building. I don't know if you can show that side of it.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you can stop right there. Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, go back.
No, come on, stop.
Yeah, so those angles on the facade of the first however many floors
Mhm.
and the one at the top feels rather jarring to me. I was curious what the thinking is about that. Like one is
Did
they're
you
at
say
this
the east building?
the east building.
Yeah, you're talking about
Yeah,
right.
that thing. I maybe it's not going to be. This is an odd angle to view it from. But I was curious sort of what your thinking was about the way those facades relate.
Yeah, the geometry is very complex at that point because we're transitioning like this, like kind of like angle bar, like into like this orthogonal middle piece, right?
Right.
And the way we're doing it, I mean, in plan, it's more simpler than in this massing. I mean, like we're just like doing it with the terraces at that point. So we're thinking about like those units that we want to give them also terraces, and
Sure.
the terraces would actually cantilever over that
Right.
bottom
Okay.
and middle piece.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to picture the relationship that it's very angular in a way that I guess I have my doubts about, but I don't know. You all figure it out, I'm sure.
That's
Sure,
yeah.
sure. I mean, yeah.
So, okay. Yeah, so the last thing I just wanted to say was, I think you showed an image from a building you all had done in Wisconsin.
Mhm.
I really liked that image. I hope that it appeared that you didn't use like a scadzillion materials on the building, which I thought was terrific. And I hope you'll take these in a similar, the buildings you're doing here in a similar direction. I seem to recall, I don't want to mangle Rob's words, but I remember Rob saying something about these buildings being sisters or cousins instead of sisters. I forget what the expression was, but I am sort of curious how you're gonna, deal with, like, say, materials wise with these 3 buildings. I assume they're gonna have a lot in common, but some different type of material or some other expression that makes them distinct from one another. So I'm going to be eager to see how that comes out.
Sure.
I think this has come a long way, and I really appreciate all the edits and the thought that you put into bringing it to this point. And I love the fact that, what was a moat
That's a good description.
between things has now become the planting strip and the seating area. And, it's just totally viewed as sort of that transition between the street and the public, right, the public realm of kind of this community. And so I think that has come a long way. I appreciate that. There's just 2 things that bug me a little bit that we probably talked about them before, but and you just expressed one of them. But one of them, I'll just go with this photo because I think it's very helpful. One of the things that makes this, I think, very successful is the doors that come out to that plaza right there. And I still have heartburn a little bit about the fact that at Back Circle at the end of Pearl Street, there's no entry at all into the middle building. And I think your diagram that shows the trail, it's that one to the left there, is revealing, and it does make me think a little bit more positively on that issue because, I'm thinking of the building coming out to help support. That diagram makes you think a little bit more about how the trail helps to support your building. Because it becomes two stops, on the pedestrian trail. And I think that's great. So you have access coming into Pearl from the trail, which I think is wonderful. I just wish at that corner, at that kind of honorific corner, simply because you got to have a circle there, there's no entry into this building, the central building. And I'm just wondering if there's any way you can get some sort of access there. If someone, just to activate it, to allow people to come out there, to, a lot of different things. That is one of the comments. The other comment was, if you go back to the gateway image, and I agree that the compression of that, I've called that the Silver Spring slot, because every building that was created in the 80s in Silver Spring all have that one-story slot in them. I think I really appreciate how the massing is creating a gateway. I think that's wonderful. But, in just very simple terms, and I'm not suggesting this is a design solution, but in very simple terms, if the right side of that upper volume of the central building was pushed back a little bit so that the base is more expressed, and then the front slot could even go away, right? The slot that's facing onto Montgomery could even go away. I mean, I don't think it's even necessary there, because you have that gateway, but you have a different type. In very simplistic terms, I think that's better. But in the design, it maybe isn't. But I think my point is that, just to have it right now, it looks like it's sort of just a removal of a very slender little piece of space, rather than the volumes kind of moving a little bit. And I think if it read more like the volumes were adjusted a little bit, I think it would help. Those are my only two comments. I think this is a wonderful project. I think it's come a long way, and I really appreciate all the work you guys have been doing on it.
Robert, did you want to share your thoughts? And then I think Grace could probably summarize
Sure.
the staff members'
Okay.
comments.
Yes, can you guys hear me okay? Am I out of the country? There might be a lag. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, would you mind going back to Sans music, the plan, the overall plan
You didn't like our
that has
music?
the landscape? Love it, but just in the interest of time. So I also had the same perception. I understand now kind of the land, how the land works with the buildings and the properties. So we didn't enlarge the public space, but tell me if these are true statements. It looks like now you can walk, if you're coming down Pearl Street, you can walk around to the east and enter the central public space only via the trail, right? Is that true? From the central building to the east building, you're using the trail, right? So that's not different from last time, but at least you've put in small engaging areas of repose into that landscape. You're mediating the grade sporadically down the spine, right? But then is it true that you can then, at least from between the central and eastern buildings, you are able to walk on your property beyond the 10 feet even from the central extension street right away or mid-block right away to the east? Is that fair to say on the property?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, we didn't get more space, but at least which you had that connection, but I think it's better resolved at this juncture.
There was a little
So
bit more
I also,
space provided on the east building. That got pushed
Right.
back a little bit.
Yeah, where you've got those 3
Okay, great.
units.
and I think it's actually much improved on the east side, especially. I do also share concerns. I'm going to be try to just build on others' comments. I do, so I applaud you for that. I do, and I hope you're successful in the 10 feet. Really, really hope that works. That we get the 10, that you can manipulate the 10 feet, and I think that's really a good investment. I do share some of I think Paul's comments resonate in terms of the entrances, and I think some of David's comments about just breaking down the scale of the central block. I think the angles and the chamfers are one way to do it, but it'll be interesting to see how. I encourage you to break down the facade scale along there, because that is very much going to be your experience. I think you've done a nice job in relieving the mass above the podium on the central building. So I would encourage you to articulate that facade of the central building so that there's some breaks and some scale to it along that frontage. I think that would be really, really helpful. The sculpting is episodic, but I think it helps. But I think some vertical articulation along it, especially given that there's no entrances in there. If what Paul's saying is true, then I really worry about it a lot. So programmatically, what is inside that central volume at that level along the trail? What uses are in there? Is that the health club? Fitness center?
Yes.
Yes.
So will there be window? Maybe they'll be on the other side. Not on this side, on the other side. I'm on the trail side.
Okay.
Will there be some openings and windows and architectural engagement with the could you put windows, and is it like
The intent
places where
is
you
to have
can
some
add-
windows where we can have them. And Robert, there's an
Yeah.
operational challenge here, obviously, because
Yeah.
you need one central point where people are coming and going from a health club. You don't want back doors. That's our challenge.
Right? No, I meant windows. Pat. I meant
Yes,
windows.
but
You know,
there
if
will
it's a
be
gym, if
windows
it's a
where, yes.
yeah, that you ought to be able to do, right? I think
Yes.
we've done fitness centers, and they always I know it's tricky, but it would be a real shame if that was just a big box, right? A big blank box, and you guys know that. So I think improvements on the public realm. I agree with everybody there. It didn't get larger, but it got more purposefully designed. I think that's good. On the massing, I'm just going to give you a couple comments. I still find the massing to be a little bit schizophrenic between the two frontages. There's two kind of urban marked corners for each of the east and central buildings, and then when you pivot to the backside, it's quite a different expression with this more organic stepping. So I think the formality of the north side versus the park side is a juxtaposition architecturally. And so I would think there's a subtle way to do this where you kind of, complete the architectural theme around the whole site, as opposed to marrying kind of a traditional breakdown of corner expression with this quite different approach on the south side. That's my experience. I would still encourage investigation of a more complete weaving of the two ideas into the one building. I think it'll be quite a surprise to come, from front to back in this architectural expression. It's just a kind of a minor comment. I do like that you're relieving the buildings below the base. I think that's good. Stepping back is good. I just don't think you have to mark all the corners so formally on the street side, on Montgomery Lane side. So overall, I would say good improvements, especially on the public realm, which I think is probably the most important on this project, given the opportunity that the Capitol Crescent Trail presents. And I think you guys are starting to embrace it. So also, as David, I liked the precedent image of the nice, simple facade with nice vertical expression from your other projects. It looks like a very nice project. So keep up the fine improvements. I think it's going the right direction.
Let me quickly summarize John's comments first. They were overall positive that the changes have been made in a good direction. He noted the 17-foot delta in elevation along the purple line is a unique challenge, and the applicant has addressed the reality appropriately. He likes that the mid-block connection is larger, and he thinks that this is, he would be happy to vote this forward to site plan. Sandeep has a couple more projects. She's applauding the changes as well. There was one note where she's appreciating the opening up of the CCT at multiple locations and creates potential for diverse pedestrian experiences. She's offering ideas for differentiating these experiences. Arts illustrated currently, which is a great start. A nice way could be to define them as sensory, therapeutic, play, conversational, or incorporate interactive art at the next stage. She knows that the plan and the rendering for the mid-block connection does not match, and it will be helpful to see additional information there. She references a project for material ideas. And then she's asking, I think this is probably something that will come out as part of the site plan requirements anyways, but would it be okay to request a design kit of parts at the site plan stage, including lighting, art, site furniture, bike amenities, canopies, and signage? This is something that we usually have in the site plan application, but I think because there is so much open space here, it would be helpful to maybe include some visuals that you plan to include in your site plan application for these amenities
At sketch plans.
at the site plan stage.
At site.
Oh.
But I think what she's maybe suggesting is like, don't, oftentimes those get included in the landscape drawings later in the stage. It might be helpful to show some visual examples earlier in the stage before you guys spec everything out and put it in the final submittals.
Yeah, I would suggest from a regulatory perspective, but precedent images with the sketch plan would be best, because by the time you come to site plan, we're going to want to know where everything is and what it is. So I think we're going to need to see that as site plan, but if you have some precedent images.
Even for like the furnishings and stuff?
I mean, so you're intending to convey intent.
Okay.
So this is some,
You don't have to.
we was on this panel, and when we were in school, he would say, show public spaces I know and love, right? So mid-block crossings I know and love, and just include one or two of those.
Yeah, because as we develop this, I mean, to the point of talking about sensory experiences, that we want to unify this development with kind of landscape strategies, whether that's the paving, or signage, the furnishings. But it's also, I was thinking, there's going to be a nice nod to what's the kind of landscaping throughout the trail and how that can kind of blend. Whether that's something that you could adopt a strategy where it's a continuous thing with native plantings, local adaptive, or maybe it starts to change when it hits ours and it goes through a kind of, the landscape morphs as you travel along it. So they're the things that we probably will develop at the next stage.
Yeah, and she is
I can add some kind of pictures and stuff.
I think that would be helpful. She is our landscape architect, so this seems
Yeah.
fitting that it's coming from her. And, at the site plan stage for the DAP submission, we do ask for a landscaping plan.
Yeah.
So I think this is just like a little bit more detailed than we would usually be asking, but it makes sense for this particular open space area. And then lastly, since the site faces south, canopies in certain locations and provide much needed shade. And she is happy to move this forward as
well. This was helpful. I will say I'm hoping, to the extent we need Park and Planning's help talking to DOT about the moat, we would love your influence.
And I think that the timeline of this project is probably going to go past next June. So that DOT's attitude in September of 2025 may be different than it is in September of 2026. So I think starting the conversation in sort of more general terms is a good idea to give them a heads up. But I think there's time. So I don't think we need to
Have
sort
a
of,
definitive answer.
yes. And I think, you probably want to, and you probably already do have in the back of your minds if DOT says absolutely not, how would you make that still quite special, I think you'd want to have probably at the site plan stage, right? I mean, I'd like to get your thoughts on how you're intending to go through the process. But it might be of use to have another version of the trail interfaced with your site. If you didn't get that,
Mhm.
I think everybody would want to know what be if you didn't get the. I think everybody would love it, right? But
Yeah, and in our minds, we're equating it to improving a 10-foot strip along the public right of way in the front of the building, for which a maintenance and liability. This is just a little bit more complex, so hopefully they see it that way.
yeah, I mean, and they've done, Robert asked if there were precedents. I mean, there are tons of precedents all over Bethesda of maintenance and liability agreements for streetscape, bike lanes, all kinds of things. So I think there is general precedent. This is higher math. When we were looking at Wilson and the Elm, which was like super high math on a very small site, everybody made it work, and there was political pressure to make it work. So I think having, like getting the IAC behind the design you're showing is.
Our plan is to go to them November 7th.
Yeah, no, that's great, because then they're gonna advocate for you to.
No,
November.
for the IAC is no.
Yeah. But I think as a general matter, keeping them in the loop and using them to leverage the regional services center, council staff, they're gonna be some ways more effective. Because they're just gonna have access to different levers. Correct.
Also, does Chevy Chase Lake have any good precedent for this type of a condition and improvement?
I mean, for Chevy Chase Lake, it comes in at the upper levels. So where you have the pool, sort of where the track is. And so it's landscaped up there, and there's a step that comes down to the main plaza. And then there's the elevator that goes down to Connecticut. So, I mean, it is, so yes, but it's really just the top of the building. So it's pretty good.
I don't know procedurally if they've already done something like this
Yeah,
on that project.
take a-
That might be a useful precedent.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember which side the trail is. There. It's on the left. You're looking east. I don't know.
I don't know.
But no, Total's fine. I think that's a good idea, looking at the Chevy Chase Lake block.
Okay, we'll do that.
I don't have any additional comments. I think you've had enough of wealth of information here. When you all come back from site plan, I think it'll be really important to have a very intentional overall approach to the design of the three buildings, whether they are similar, completely different, or have a kit of parts approach that applies to the podiums and the towers. Just starting from there, I think would really help move the conversation quicker than just starting to look at images of architecture for three things. So just
Plan to
heads
to
up.
that point, are you intending to do once and to?
Our-
We're talking about the commercial to residential.
Yes, so right now, even before the office to resi conversion, our plan was to have individual site plans for all three buildings. And now we would still proceed with separate applications, but it is possible that the west building and the central building may be the expedited approval for the office to resi conversion.
So the expedited approval is sketch and site.
Well, I know, so what, that gets a little complicated. What we would do at this time is amend the sketch to eliminate the sketch from those. If we end up doing the expedited approval for the central and west building, we would treat what we're going through now essentially as the concept plan that you guys want to see if we were doing the expedited. So we go through expedited approval for the west and the central building, and with those applications, we would amend the sketch plan to eliminate those buildings from the sketch plan process. Since expedited approval is sort of consolidation of the two processes.
So then, that's very helpful. So then to a tool's point, it would be of use in the sketch plan to have some discussion of sort of the kit of parts, how, I mean, each of these buildings is going to need to comply with the design guidelines, but they also want to speak to each other. And if they're separate site plans, there won't be one site plan where you sort of lay out the sort of kit of parts of what the articulation and what the facades are going to be. There's going to be 3 separate site plans.
Well, there were, application wise, there'll be 3 separate site plans, and we haven't talked about this yet, but I think that nonetheless, we could show how we're marrying all 3 buildings, because it's not as if there's gonna be a 10-year gap, hopefully not a 10-year gap. So we'll have design ideas for all 3, so that you're not looking at each one in a vacuum. But you can,
But if that was something that you could include in the sketch plan, even just as for illustrative.
I don't think we've advanced the design enough.
Okay.
So. But I think we can make a commitment that when it comes to site plan, you're not going to be viewing each individual building separate and apart from how it relates to the other 2.
I think we'll need to figure out how to do that, because you would feel about that. So I think
About that,
I just think
providing like one,
it's because this is such a large development.
uh-huh.
I think it's, you know, it's great that it's all one sketch plan. I just think it would be good to be able to have stuff from a regulatory perspective, thinking about ways to make sure that what you're basically just how to document the commitment you just.
I think, I mean, I could see a condition at sketch plan, just essentially saying the buildings will be cousins. I mean, you say it in a more design oriented way,
I think it would include the theme change. I think cousins is in the condition.
but you get my point. I mean, I think we'd be comfortable with that, because that's our, I mean, I think from a design standpoint, we want them to relate to some extent.
Yeah.
So we would do it anyway, and to make sure that the public knows that, we'd be fine with condition.
Have a timeline for submitting applications?
So we have a civic meeting on October 7th. And then our hope is to shortly thereafter file the sketch plan. So
So October 7th, and then you're on IAC November 6th.
I thought it was the 7th, but
Or
the
this-
first week of,
November?
yes, the first week of November.
And then when were you submitting?
Hopefully, our plan was to submit before we go to the IAC, so sometime in October. Is there any issue with that?
I think they do like to see things sooner rather than later. I think in this case, this is very big. So, you know, to get sort of the train moving, that's fine. And this is just sketch plan. So I think I mean, they've done enough of these. I mean, there was a time when IAC folks would have been on the call. So,
There are actually, that was the question that I wanted to ask. Is Eric Padgett and Lisa B part of your team?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, so I don't think that'll be an issue. Just be very clear with them about what you're doing when.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Right.
Appreciate your feedback.
Oh, thank you for all.
Excited to move this forward. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.